Hello and welcome. End of April, I set off for Spain via France. And it was a trip that was a quarter holiday with my family and 3/4 exploring brands in both countries. I wanted to see a fairly decent number of brands, specifically in their home country. I wanted to see the workshops. I wanted to see the products, how they're made. I just wanted to get a really good understanding of the workings, the look, the feel, the mood, the vibe of a brand in their own territory. And so in this video, I'm going to talk about some of the brands I came across, the highlights. I'm also going to talk about hotels, restaurants, and a couple of other interesting places I encountered along the way. I'm Anesu Sagonda, and I produce educational luxury content for anyone after the finer things, whether you're young and starting out in life and wanting to reap the benefits of buying better quality from the get-go, or you're into luxury but you want to focus more on high quality, under the radar brands, or you're new to money and wanting to learn how to navigate the terrain, then my content is geared towards you. I have been incredibly fortunate over the last 3 years to be able to take self-drive holidays onto the continent with my family. And we absolutely love them because you have maximum flexibility. You can come and go wherever you please, when you please. You don't have the limitations of flights, connections, or rental vehicles, the pickup, drop-off, insurance, and so forth. You just make it up as you go along, which is what we typically do. I had 2 anchor meetings, one right at the beginning with Grimm, and the second at the end of the trip with Prowess by David Hanna. And then in the middle, I had a week in Igualada, and I had, on either side of those meetings, time for rest, relaxation, to catch up on notes, and also to see other brands, which invariably come up on such trips. Set off from the United Kingdom, and the first night was spent in Honfleur. And Honfleur is a beautiful coastal town in the north of France. Arrived late afternoon, dumped our bags in the hotel, and proceeded to the port and had coupe de champagne and saucisson with the sun streaming down. It was absolutely glorious. A couple of hours later, felt fairly hungry and tried to get into one of the highly rated restaurants in Honfleur. I don't remember the name, but I will dig out the details from my diary and I'll include them just down below. Tried to get in, couldn't, it was fully booked. Honfleur is a small coastal town, but it has a lot of footfall and some fantastic restaurants. But decided to go there anyway and arrived, and they just had a cancellation. So managed to dine in the restaurant, and it was an absolutely fantastic start to the holiday. The next day, proceeded on to Bordeaux via Chateau de Chenonceau. It's a chateau with gorgeous grounds. They have 4 different landscaped gardens within the grounds of the chateau. And I soon came to realize very quickly that chateaus are very similar to what we have in the United Kingdom, the National Trust properties, with fairly expansive grounds, and then a National Trust property with some sort of history attached to it. And you can tour both or one or the other, for example. Chateau de Chenonceau, highly recommend. A lot of footfall, as you can imagine. It was a lovely day in terms of the weather. Went around the property and they had some of the most gorgeous floral arrangements made from flowers actually grown in the grounds. From there, proceeded on to the hotel. We were staying in for 3 days, and it's a hotel called La Sauce des Cordeliers, which I highly recommend. They have a number of other branches dotted around France, I think about 3, maximum 4. And based on the Bordeaux one, which is about 40 minutes from the center of Bordeaux, I'm keen to try the others if they are near any of the other cities. If I have brands or meetings and there's one of their hotels, I will definitely try it and would recommend. Liked the experience. There are a couple of hiccups, which I didn't expect at that level of luxury, but they didn't put us off the hotel. Really liked the look of the hotel. It's incredibly polished, very well put together. The facilities, they have a spa. They also provide bicycles for guests, so you can cycle around the region. It's within the wine region in Bordeaux. And one of the days we went around to see a number of producers, bought some wine, which was then shipped off to the United Kingdom ready for our arrival. And the hotel itself is located in a vineyard of one of the local producers. They have 3 restaurants. One of them is a Michelin star. It may have actually 2 Michelin stars. It's more of a fine dining tasting menu, which we're not so keen on, I guess, because it's so fussy. It takes a lot of time. But they have a fantastic informal bar called Rouge, where we dined the first day. And it's more tapas style, and really enjoyed it, actually. And what I like is when you are in France and Spain, and particularly the regions where they have the wine, and I guess nationwide, wine is incredibly cheap, which is what I would expect. So you get to really try a lot of the wines. They're priced anywhere from 2 to 5, 6, 7 euros is typically expensive in the average place. But the bar was fantastic, a good way of just working through some of the local wines. And then when you went to see the producer, you had already tried some of the wine and you potentially liked it, but just wanted to explore more of what they have. And then the second night, dined in their bistro called La Table du Lavoir. Absolutely enjoyed it. It ended up being the best meal of the entire trip. We ordered steak. I like steaks, but they're eaten sparingly. And I tend to try and really focus on steaks that are high quality, seeing as I don't eat them that often. And it was the best. Flavorful, it was juicy. And considering we went to the Basque country in France and in Spain, we were quite surprised that the best steak was actually inland in France. The last day of the trip was my meeting with Grimm, which I have spoken about in detail. I'm going to attach the video above. I still have another video I'd like to release with the creative director, and I'm trying to figure out how to edit it because it's fairly lengthy. Had the meeting, and then the next day proceeded on to Espelette to meet with Remy Cariat, which ended up being an absolutely fantastic trip. I thought I was going to pick up samples, and then it ended up being able to tour the entire facility and being able to really understand why firsthand Remy Cariat's leathers are exceptional and their reputation precedes the brand, and I could see for myself firsthand. From there, went on to Biarritz, spent a couple of days, just rest, relaxation, enjoying the sea, the seafood, the sights in Biarritz, and then proceeded on to Bilbao via San Sebastian. San Sebastian gets a lot of publicity on social media. It's known as the food capital of the world. And if you're someone who is discerning and you would like really high quality steak coupled with fantastic service, then places like Bar Nesta, Bar Sport, La Vina, I wouldn't recommend at all. They are absolutely overrun with tourists. But what you'll also notice is it's a conveyor belt. They're trying to get as many people in and out as quickly as possible. And I honestly didn't think the quality of the food warranted the attention, but that's the power of social media. But if you would like really good steaks in a restaurant where service is important, then I would recommend Casa Julián, and in Bilbao, a restaurant called Amaren. Hoping to be back in the north of Spain, within the Basque country, possibly at some point this year or next year, and I'll definitely be trying some of the low-key restaurants that are really focused on higher quality product. It's in some cases a lot more expensive or a little more expensive. It ranges, but you're honestly getting a better quality product than what you get from the hyped up places on social media. In Bilbao, also managed to take in a couple of exhibitions in the Guggenheim. And whenever I'm in Spain, I always try and go to the local El Corte Inglés, which is their luxury department store, just to see what's going on. And popped in and stumbled upon a new sneaker brand called Hoff. Initially looked at it and thought, oh, I like it. But what stood out was the trainers were made using a lot of man-made fabrics, fiber. They looked good. They looked the part. They looked trendy. They looked funky. But I just questioned the wear and tear, the durability. Mulled over the brand and thought, you know what, at some point, I'm sure I'll come across them again. I will be in Spain for another week or so, 10 days, and I'm sure I will see them in another El Corte Inglés, and I can have a really good look at the brand. From Bilbao, via Pamplona, proceeded on to Igualada. Pamplona actually ended up being the place where I had the best foie gras pincho ever. I like steaks, I like foie gras. I know two highly divisive food items, but I eat them sparingly. And foie gras I typically will eat only in France. And I like sauteed foie gras more than the pate. I'm also going to include the name of the bar in Pamplona where I had the foie gras pincho. It was fantastic. It was really rich, but it was a small portion, which was perfect. Spent a week in Igualada. And Igualada was a trip I really wanted to make. It was also an anchor of the trip. And I wanted to really understand firsthand, what does made in Spain mean? What does it look like? Who are the players? And I physically wanted to spend time because you will arrive somewhere and you'll have brands or ideas in mind. And once you're on the ground, a lot of things start to become apparent. Igualada is where a good number of the suppliers are based that supply the leather goods makers in Ubrique, which is in the south of France in Andalusia, a 10.5-hour drive. In Igualada, you have a number of Spain's foremost tanneries. So think, for example, Cortida Badia, they supply a good number of the big ticket brands, as well as mid-tier brands like Stowe and Strathberry, for example. There's Mireille, they supply Louis Vuitton with the vachette for their handles. There's also Splendor, crafting absolutely stunning vegetal tanned leathers. And there's also Fontaneus and Marty, which I'm going to talk about in a later video. And they also supply some of the good and the great, like Hermès, Christian Dior, Louis Vuitton, for example. There's also in Igualada a leather goods school where they teach students the art of leather goods, bag making, and so forth. And it's the only school in Spain that's accredited. And they also have a number of other facilities, research facilities. They have, for example, technicians, chemical technicians who will put together the formulas for tanning the leathers, particularly for brands that are too small to have an in-house team focused on creating the formulas for the pigments to be able to tan or dye the hides, for example. So spending time in Igualada was fantastic. And it just so happened the time I was there, they actually had an official ceremony twinning Igualada with Ubrique, because those are the two hubs when it comes to the leather goods industry in Spain. The suppliers are in Igualada and the makers are in Ubrique. From Igualada, proceeded down to Valencia. Valencia managed to see another brand I'm going to talk about called Lotus 1877, and also managed to actually see a standalone Hoff store, spent time in there and ended up buying a pair of trainers, which I'm really keen to try. And I actually met a couple of customers in there who were making repeat purchases wearing the trainers. And they said, you know, we've had them for a year. One person had them for a year, one had them for 6 months. And they said, really like them, comfortable, the wear and tear is fantastic. But I think it depends on the particular style. But I may be wrong, but I will keep you posted and I'll talk about my Hoff sneakers in a later video. From Valencia, started chasing the sun, had about 3 or 4 days and went down as far south as Cordoba. Cordoba was a lot of fun. It was different, close to Seville, a lot of oranges, the sun was shining, and a little bit of time to relax. What was interesting is we were there roughly round about the same time as Chelsea Flower Show in the United Kingdom, which is a fairly highly recognized global event when it comes to horticulture, and it's in London. And in Cordoba, around the same time, they had a festival with a number of residents converting their courtyards into floral gardens for tourists, visitors to the city to actually view. And you could pop in a couple of euros to say thank you and to help them with the maintenance. But it was an exhibition literally for a few days, and we went around to see a number of houses. And it was just interesting to see their local flower show. From Cordoba, started heading slowly back towards France in preparation for my last meeting with Prouesse by David Hanna. Returned via Salamanca through Zaragoza, and then on the way from Spain to France, discovered Limoges was just in between Spain and France. It was, I think, just after the Pyrenees. And I've always wanted to go to Lourdes, didn't actually realize Lourdes was within our route, within reach, and decided to spend a night. It was an absolutely amazing, calming, enriching experience. And because of the time of year, wrongly assumed, it'll be quiet, there won't be many people. And Lourdes is always swarmed. There were thousands of people when we arrived, attended the first mass we could get into in Italian, but you could understand roughly what was going on. And then in the evening, attended a procession around Lourdes, and you were able to see just how many people were actually in Lourdes, with different reasons, some coming for healing, some arriving like myself, just for peace, for calm and centering. And then the next day, incredibly lucky enough to have made the full immersion ceremony. So that was really interesting and something that I never thought I'd be able to do in my lifetime. From there, proceeded on to Limoges. Stayed in deepest, darkest rural Limoges. Absolutely blissful. Fresh air, green grass, lush vegetation all around, peace and quiet, and just time to recharge and then catch up on a lot of notes. And I also did some recording during that time. In Limoges, they are known for their food. It's a bit of a foodie spot, and went to a couple of restaurants, particularly liked one called Les Tables du Bistrot. When we arrived, I was absolutely starving. Rushed into the restaurant, went straight upstairs and sat down and ordered. It was only when we were leaving I realized, oh my goodness, they actually had a barn right next to the entrance where they had a Limousin cow. And that region, that particular region where Limoges is, they are known for the Limousin cows. They are cows that produce meat that's lean, it's incredibly flavorful, and it's also tender. In contrast to the United Kingdom, where we typically have steaks from Angus cows, for example, that are rich, they're juicy, and they're fairly fatty, whereas the French are known, the Limousin, for the leaner steaks. And I remember walking out and then seeing a barn with a big Limousin cow in there. And I think there was a calf and chickens and so forth. And I thought, wow, what a nice touch. You actually walk in and you see the cow they are fattening up for the next month, for example, and the chickens you typically may eat if you come back in a few weeks' time, for example. And I thought that's actually a really nice touch, and you could either love it or hate it. But what I found interesting is that typically looked for restaurants that were well known for steaks or a particular type of cuisine, seafood, for example, or local food. I'm not vegetarian, as you can tell. And I never actually really saw many vegetarian options. And I just found it interesting in France that the assumption is you're a meat eater and you just get on with it. Limoges was absolutely fantastic. From Limoges, proceeded on to Burgundy. In Burgundy, went to see a number of producers, learned about the different types of wine within Burgundy. There's Burgundy Village, Premier Cru, Grand Cru. Tried quite a few, bought even more wine. And then from Burgundy, proceeded on to Prouesse by David Hanna. It was one of the best meetings ever because seeing a brand in its home country, the workers, the family, the owners, in its environment is absolutely fantastic. It's one of the most important things you can do. And I take my channel, my content really seriously. And I think for my content to really make sense, I need to implicitly understand my brands. And so going to see brands like Prouesse by David Hanna or de Grimm, for example, and getting to meet the owners, the creative director, understanding the brands, how they bring together the designs, how they make the bags and the leathers, the components and so forth is game changing. Just being able to appreciate the love, the passion, the craft that goes into Prouesse by David Hanna bags was fantastic. And I really would like to be back soon to make really in-depth content that I think we need within the leather goods space. From there, started heading back towards the United Kingdom via Le Conche. One of the days, stopped over in Le Conche. I really wanted to see the range cooker brand called Le Conche. And my meeting was game changing because I've already created the video and I just wanted to see Le Conche and take a few visuals. I actually scrapped the video and I'm going to start again because the visit was eye-opening to be able to see a single sheet of stainless steel be transformed into an absolutely outstanding, high-performing range cooker was just amazing, for use of a better word. I was just absolutely blown. And it just helped me really appreciate when family, friends, even colleagues speak highly about Le Conche range cookers. I really understand why from the craftsmanship, the material point of view. From there, the last stop, and the last stop was just serendipitous because I called a grower champagne producer called Jacques Salossi, and they are known arguably as the top grower champagne. And grower champagne is champagne that is made by grapes grown by the producer, as opposed to the Grand Marque champagne like Veuve Clicquot, Dom Perignon, Moët Chandon, for example, where they buy grapes from numerous suppliers. It's a standard product. They need that to be able to create the same type of champagne consistently. Whereas grower champagne, it's grapes that have been grown by the producer, and they take pride in being able to grow grapes, and they make wine that's unique. And in the case of Jacques Salossi, it's powerful, they're complex, and they're very much terroir driven. The terroir is so important. I learned in Burgundy and also in Champagne. And terroir is the soil coupled with the elevation and also the climate and the impact that has on the grapes. And I remember calling last year, we were also in the Champagne region, specifically in Reims, and called Jacques Salossi because they have a hotel. And you need to actually be a resident to be able to attend the wine tasting. And the wine tasting is conducted by Jacques Salossi's son called Anselm. And Anselm is the person who's actually responsible for making Jacques Salossi the global success that it is today. And he only conducts 3 wine tastings, all by appointment, by guests, 3 times a week. And called the first time, couldn't get in. Called the second time and found out there'd been a cancellation just for 1 day. But it was the day before the wine tasting. And I put it out in the universe and I manifested a cancellation. The guests who were supposed to stay the day after us cancelled. So it meant we had 2 days and we could attend the wine tasting session conducted by Anselm. And it's something I highly recommend to anybody who is after an absolutely outstanding experience. An experience just as is. And then if you're fanatical about champagne and you'd like to raise your champagne game, or you're into grower champagne, then I highly recommend, because Anselm actually conducts wine tastings in a way I have never experienced. He's part free thinker, part maverick, part eccentric. He's just wonderful. And he tells you to come in, don't think about anything, don't imagine anything, just go with the flow. Had a selection of 6 of their wines, a good selection of all of them. And you get a really good understanding of their champagnes, the impact of the terroir, how he brings all of the wines together, the maturity. And limited quantities are made every year. That is why their champagnes are rare, they're collectible, and they're eye-wateringly expensive. The average price for his champagnes are between 300 to 500 euros a bottle, but they go up to thousands of euros a bottle. And enjoyed the wine tasting. It was a life-changing experience. And it just helped me to really understand, grow a champagne, and to heighten my expectations. So that's a month in France and Spain, part holiday, but largely looking at brands, exploring opportunities, and just having a good time along the way. Any thoughts, any questions, as always, let me know in the comments section down below.